Friday night, another night
It
in
is Friday
St.
night.
George.
This is our fourth World Championship podcast. I think we've done 2 70.3s and 2 full Ironman World Championships.
That sounds about right. And then this time we were able to find a guest for our podcast.
I know, and to make things even better, a former world champion as well.
Yeah.
So even better. I mean, very rarely. Oh, this is our second world champion, I think. So we're doing pretty good for our little podcast.
That's right. And Melanie, welcome to our evidence-based triathlete, which is really just two guys talking triathlon. So, but it's so great. I'm glad I saw you post on Instagram that you were in St. George, and I'm like, oh, we're here. Let's see if we can pull something together. And so, thank you for doing this. And Melanie is a longtime pro, and I hope you'll go through your history a little bit. And you're just having some fabulous races. This recently, it's just it's great to see the success that you're having now. Welcome to our podcast.
Oh, thank you. Well, I think you guys are being really modest because it's like two really smart cookies talking triathlon. So thank you very much for inviting me. This is the first time I've ever come to St. George and spent any time training here. And it's funny, I've come here a number of times and like kind of just done the minimal sort of get ready for the race route. And this has been a real treat to explore a lot more and just kind of see what St. George has to offer in terms of training, which is a lot, there's a lot of evidence to that with the amount of time that the Wurtels had spent here in the past. So I finally made the trek here to spend some time here myself.
So I have to ask you, where's been your favorite place to ride since you've been here?
Well, I did that Vale loop, and I did it with like the steep side down, like the fast way down.
Yeah, that's a fun way to do it.
Yeah, that was awesome. That was really fun, and just the different terrain for that. And I went to Zion, and I rode up the Kolob Terrace Road up to the reservoir up there.
Wow.
And that was spectacular. And I think I've done a pretty good job of trying to find like some of the really good stuff. And I ran up the West Canyon Road, I ran up Snow Canyon. And so I just had like a lot of opportunity to kind of see as much as possible during some like Ironman workouts. Because obviously I'm not in St. George to race the World Championships. I'm here to support athletes that I coach. And then I'll go off and race in Arizona shortly.
Awesome.
So wait, did you get a piece of Veo pie then on your ride?
I didn't even know anything about this pie shop. I just saw it at the corner. Like nobody gave me the intel on that. So no, I did not know about the pies. So obviously I have to come back. Yes. I found out about that later. So I was kind of on a mission to like just, because that's a funny ride, right? It takes so long to get there, and then it takes like 3 seconds to get back. So I was sort of like, did I underestimate how long this was going to take? And no. So it is a fun ride.
I think Veo Pie should be a sponsor of the show because we've talked about them so many times.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's so fun. Totally. Well, I'm super glad that you're enjoying the Southwest. And I mean, this is a great place to get ready for Ironman Arizona for sure. The terrain is so similar, but you do get some climbing. And you get some strength. You get some strength there as well. So that's awesome. And then you're off to Vegas.
Yeah, well, just Vegas on my way home, basically. So, so just the way it worked out, I'm gonna stop in Vegas for a day on my way out and just do my last long run in Las Vegas. It'll be a little bit warmer. I was gonna try and find something relatively flattish, right, like concrete, and do something, something a little bit concrete and paved because then we're starting to get into the last block into the race, and there's not much to do when I go back to atmospheric rivers in Canada for 10 days.
Well, and it's interesting, like you're saying you want concrete paved because that's a big thing in Arizona, right? A lot of that run course is flat, and concrete. It's harsh.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It's important to prepare for that. And I like, honestly, like as much as St. George has a lot, and I talk about the fun climbing stuff because, you know, obviously that's what I prefer to ride. I did do like some loops along Highway 7 in a sandstorm. So that was a lot of very Arizona specific terrain. So I did do 5 hours of that already here. So I've and then when I was doing that, I was like, wow, now I remember why I had so little fun in Arizona when I did this. The other 2 times I've done Arizona is just because it's so foreign to me. To like, that's just not anything that I have at home. And so I'm just really fortunate to be here and to be doing this, because this is probably the most specific I've ever been able to be for like a particular Ironman. So yeah, it's good.
So let me ask you a question about that. When you're coaching your athletes, is this something you try and get them to do? Is some like specific stuff to get them ready for the course that they're doing? And is that something you look for?
Absolutely. I think in a nutshell, training is like creating a big toolbox. So maybe some non-specific training that just creates a variety and an abundance of skills, fitness, and capacity. And then as you get closer to the race, then you start to funnel everything towards the specific demands of whatever that race is. So obviously I'm a little more flexible, and being able to travel and be somewhere for it's like X amount of time. That's a luxury that I think like I primarily coach. I have a pro and I coach myself. So that's like more of a professional type of coaching, you know, relationship. But then I coach a lot of age group athletes, and when you're an age grouper, you're taking time off to get to the race. You're not taking time off to go and be somewhere to prepare for the race. Some people are. So that kind of specificity is often not available. And then, you know, I coach an athlete that is in New Orleans, where it's like absolutely zero elevation gain, and she's trying to race here, right? So it's hot, it's like humid and soggy there, and it's like cold, super dry and hilly here. And so what do we do to prepare for that? Well, she's on Zwift, right? Like trying to like climb for 20 to 30 minutes at a time, because it's just not an option. But that was definitely like, so even if she could ride outdoors, well, you know, we have to get specific about what this race demands. And it's a giant hill at the end of the race with some leg speed after. And you just do what you can with what is available for the athlete. So certainly specificity is going to make a difference, like when it comes to race, though, for sure.
You know, such a challenge when people, they have no environment, right? Like, or even people in Canada that you coach, in, you know, if they have an early race and they can't get outside and ride, and they can't get outside and run a lot of the time, it is a big challenge. You know, when the 70.3s were here last time, there was I don't know if you remember, the course was the huge downhill twice, the really steep one. And people from like Florida, like they couldn't, or New Orleans or wherever, they couldn't train it, right? Because there's no treadmill that will go 20% down, right? Like you can do hills up on a treadmill, but you can't do hills down on a treadmill. So it's hard, right? It's hard for people to do that specificity.
Yeah, no, and like definitely you can do some work in the gym on eccentrics to try and prepare for that eccentric loading that you're going to get from downhill. And I think that's probably the best that you're going to do. And some treadmills will go to like -2%. I had a pre-core at one point that was like a little bit of downhill. So you can practice that a little bit, but yeah, no, like getting specific to that kind of stuff is, I mean, you'd have to be somewhat creative, and in the end, it would just be a disadvantage. And I was actually talking to somebody today who did her best to try and get ready for this race. She lives somewhere really flat, and she's like, I don't know, I think my jam is flat races. And you know, like it's your hobby. You know, if you have the ability to train for like flat races and you're good at it, then probably makes sense to choose those races and go, right? I don't know, like that, like. Yeah, it's fun to be at a world championships because you want to measure yourself, but like luckily the 70.3 worlds is going to move around, and I think Finland's probably going to be flat, right? So next time it's going to be the flat racers that get their day. It's still going to be cold, but it's going to be flat. So so I think that just the reality, and and even within the age group field, yeah, like I recognize, because I coach all sorts, and like some people just have like an exponentially larger amount of time to train than others, and so
Yeah.
there isn't like how much you don't go into the race and like present your training diary and say, okay, I've been able to do this many hours, so then I'm in this category of this category. And then, the other people that have like 3 young kids and a full-time job and whatever, and they're in a different category, right? And so that's the tough thing about the age group field, is that it's a mixed bag of like, compartmentalizing your life to training for this thing. And so I always say, like, you can continue to, I think the most important thing is to like look at where you're at and how much improvement you're making in yourself as an athlete, and focus on that first, because that's what really in the end is going to like be memorable and valuable. And then start comparing yourself to everybody else. And if you're getting close, then that's really cool. But sometimes like you just like you have to make choices, right? Like, do you want to, you only have so much time, and triathlon fits in this much time. And, it's unfortunately, it comes down to a lot of times to time. And so I just encourage everybody to make triathlon their own journey and their own, like, fit into their life in a way that is, satisfying, motivating, and like gets them fired up to train, rather than like just constantly comparing to everybody else, because that can be exhausting and demotivating.
I'm so glad you said that. There's been people that I've worked with and talked to, and they could have a great race, right? And let's say they have a great race here even, and they finish, I don't know, like, on the podium, 3rd, 4th, right? And they could have the race of their life and they're disappointed. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, well, you can't control that the other 2 or 3 people showed up. You can only control yourself. Yeah. And you have no idea the journey that those other people have been on. You only know your journey. And I think it's really important for people to recognize that it's about you, and this is your hobby, like you said. I love the fact you said hobby, right? Mm-hmm. Oftentimes we let this hobby run our lives and rule our lives, and and I don't think it's very healthy when your hobby, takes away from your life. Like you're talking about, like with family and friends, and mm-hmm. and a life outside triathlon is super important.
Yeah, and again, I coach some people that are very serious. It takes up like a lot of their life, right? And I respect that, and I'm on board. Like, if this is what you do, like pretty much primarily, other than work and like maintain a relationship, awesome. Like, we're gonna see how fast you can be. But no matter what level you're at, like I coach somebody who's like a serial podium performer. Like, if he doesn't win, it's not a good day in his mind. But my whole thing is like, okay, like you're now in your 50s, like how can we keep you this fast? And we're going to just keep focusing on like, how can you be the fastest version of you? And then these results that because he's constantly just focused on what's right for him, not like measuring himself against the field and saying, oh, well, this guy is a faster biker, so I need to pour all my time into riding. No, that's not what is best for him. And similarly, if somebody's not quite on the podium yet, or like, in the middle of the field, for that person, it's the exact same like evaluation of an athlete. Like where can we get in 1, 6, 12 months, 5 years, and like how are we going to work on this, and keep focusing on you, because there's no doubt, like regardless of what your race results are, if you keep seeing improvements in training and like metrics or benchmarks for yourself, that's that's super motivating. And honestly, that's what, when we went through this pandemic and there was no racing, like I basically lost like 1 athlete, because everybody else was like, hey, I've got all this time. And I just kept pointing out, like, you have all this time and we can keep measuring your improvement, and you're just going to keep improving. And a whole bunch of athletes like came out of the pandemic a lot better, and all of them had something, tangible to hang on to like keep them in this process. And I think that was a really good illustration of how racing is a celebration, and like it's a fun day to see what you have on the day, and it's being part of this community. And for some people, it's a day of recognition for like how like awesome they are. And for others, like they may not get recognition, but it's like a benchmark, it's a test day, it's all these things. But all the rest of it, like working through all the training and getting to that race, that has to be motivating as well. And it isn't unless you're really focused on your own thing. And so if you stay focused on your own thing all the time, and then you get to the race and you're still kind of focused on, okay, what have we worked on? What's my plan, execution? And then after the race, did I execute? How did I measure up? Am I happy with this? Did I have fun? You know, that kind of stuff. So it's really personal. And I think that just society is a little bit too comparative right now. And comparison really does kill your own like confidence and mojo. So you have to be careful, right? Like we want to be part of something, but we don't want to directly compare ourselves all the time. And sometimes there's a subtle difference between those two things.
I love this because one of our themes for the club this year is enjoy the journey. And I like how you're talking about how important that is. And you also are talking about this long-term vision really of fitness. So now that we're almost at the end of the year, at least for a lot of triathletes, how do you now start working with the athletes that you're coaching, or what do you do yourself as you hit this so-called off-season period that's coming up? I know you're not there yet, but and what is off? You know, when does off-season really begin now?
Yeah. Well, so I think like goals have to have you know, like they have to have a timeline associated with them, but before we set them, we have to like evaluate, right? So like what were I ask athletes to go through the year and go like what went right, what went wrong, what would you do different, and then what would you like to, where would you like to be in like X, Y, Z amount of time? And then with those goals, then also like, where would you like to be fast? Then it comes down to like, okay, where the season planning and stuff like that. And I think that sometimes people pick races, like, so I'm just going to like go back to our conversation about Canada for a second, just like you were saying, Ted. You know, I think sometimes people pick races just because like they pick a race, but they don't really think about the race. So just like when I was talking about the one athlete I have who came and like she like crushed Worlds, but like she would be much better if it were flat. She wanted to go to Worlds, but is that the best race for her? Probably not, right? Is it ever going to be? I don't know. She lives in Illinois. It's tough, right? Like it's not ideal. So for Canadians, I always say, okay, we always want to get started and go racing, right? And then go down to like, I don't know, Oceanside in April 1st, right? And so half of Canada, it hasn't even stopped snowing yet. So they've been training indoors all year. And I'll just like say, like, you know, Paula Finley went to Florida and won off the trainer in Calgary. So it's not like it's impossible. But she is a pro athlete with a ginormous carrot like dangled in front of her face. For the rest of us, it's like Christmas, and then it's like the doldrums of January where the snow sucks, you can't even really ski, and then February it starts to be good ski weather, and then March is like, oh my gosh, the season's around the corner. So like thinking about like how is this season really going to unfold, especially for those who are racing until now, right? So they're going to probably take November off. December is a tough month to get going, but generally it is a month to get going. So I always say, you know, if you're going to go and race early in the southern states or whatever, you're competing against people in the southern states who have been riding all year round. Like generally, even my experience, like I've been a professional athlete for a long time. Like I raced mountain bikes first, and we did the whole road calendar. Then I raced Xterra, and now I'm in Ironman. But like even back when I raced mountain bikes, we'd go down and race Redlands early in the season. I think it was like March or something like that. And girls that were nowhere near us at Worlds were kicking our asses at Redlands, right? Because, you know, we'd be coming out of Canada. That's we started going to training camps in New Mexico so we wouldn't suck as bad, but like we'd go there and like everybody was just fitter. And then that continued when I went down for mountain biking. I'd go down to San Diego to do camps in like March or whatever. And I'd be like, wow, I am really not in shape, because people that I wouldn't expect to be way ahead of me when I was like at the top of my career were like kicking my ass. Right? So, but you got to look at like when you want to be fit. So for me, I always wanted to be really fit in October. So in general, in March and April, I was less fit. And I think that was sort of healthy and has led to like a significant amount of longevity for me as an athlete. And so for Canadians that may not have like triathlon as their 100% thing, picking races in April when you're like in the snow and you're still skiing, maybe not the best bet. So in terms of I think planning out your year and then setting the goals based on like, okay, what really works in my year. Some people with small kids, it doesn't make any sense to do races in July because they're out of school. It's like summer holidays time. Like it's hot, like forget it. Like July is family month. And then you go back to racing in the fall when the kids go back to school, right? Like set a calendar that makes sense for your life. Who cares what the Ironman calendar is? Like, it's like, when are you going to be good? And then pick stuff around that. And so all that planning is part of it. And then we go, okay, well, like I said, what are we going to get better at in the next like month, 6 months, year? And then what was our 5-year plan? Are we staying on that plan? Have we changed? Things like that.
Awesome. So I do have a little follow-up with that one. So we actually have a little issue here in Las Vegas. Like early fall races aren't very good for us because you can't ride long outside in the summer. Like it's just, well, you can, it's just really hard. It's, hey, I'm going to give you a 5-hour bike ride and it's going to be 100 degrees at 8 a.m. when you start, or 7 a.m. when you start. So we have something similar. And so, I kind of advise people to be smart about that exact same thing. And recognize when you sign up a year in advance. Yeah. Because it looks good a year in advance, right? Oh yeah, I'm going to go do this race. It's going to be great. It's in September. I'm going to have all this time in the summer. And then they start to realize, wow, actually I don't, because in the long run is just as maybe even worse. Yeah. So I think you're right. I think it's all about, factoring that in. But then again, as long as your expectations are where they are, right? Like even with, the Canadians that come to Oceanside, and I always seem to talk to Canadians at Oceanside, if they come into it, the mentality of, hey, I'm not that fit, but I'm here because I want to have some fun. I want to go swim in the ocean, have this awesome bike course, and just have a good time. Hey, that's awesome, right? But but if you're going there to like PR and like crush it, you know
exactly.
Pretty
well,
tough.
You have to kick off the season somewhere, right? So some people like are going to plan like an early summer Ironman or something, and so they really do need to get started with racing, and probably those ones are going to do more time on the trainer instead of like be a little bit more general. But again, like there's no wrong answer to this. It's more my philosophy is like, what is going to work for you? And then I just make suggestions as to like ways that you can manipulate the calendar and your time and whatever around the other stuff that's in your life. Because I think that balance is like, it's not balancing, it's like prioritizing different things at different times. And sometimes it's like full on train mode and then race mode, and sometimes it's family mode. And if you just like kind of look at your year from that perspective, like when is the best time for me to spend time on this, then you generally get a better outcome because like other stress in your life, like on top of your training, is going to prevent you from doing all that training. So trying to avoid like the other stress, like accountants should not plan to do a big training block for Ironman in April. Right? Like it just doesn't make sense. And so like, these are just examples of ways that you shouldn't, if you're not a professional athlete, you should not fight what the rhythm of your own life is and pick good times for you. And most people know that. They know, hey, I've got all this time. Why am I resting now? Right? Like, why didn't I plan for this to be my time to be doing all the work? Because I have all this time to do work or go to training camps or whatever. Like factor that in this time of year. And that's the other thing too with age group athletes. You guys have to sign up like a billion years in advance to get in these races. So having this plan, so okay, this is the race I need to be in next year, so I'm going to plan that in advance and all the rest of it, so that kind of the overall picture of like how your year is going to unfold. Then you're just going to have better success that way.
Agreed. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. My Wi-Fi is not that great, so sorry about this, everyone. So I love this discussion, and I really like this outlook on the season. You know, and I like the idea of planning ahead of time. I enjoy that planning myself. And but what about the times where someone plans out for a big event and they really target that event, and maybe they don't have the race that they wanted or that they think they should have? How do you talk with athletes when maybe they're disappointed? You know, maybe they come to this world championship and maybe they just did not have a great race, and yet they were planning for such a long period of time. How do you work with them on that?
Well, I think like generally you can see in the lead up kind of what's happening. So like for instance, in this race, I had 3 athletes that came to this race, and one has so much other stress going on in her life that's totally uncontrollable that her preparation was like, I would describe it as like almost haphazard, because she just was unable to like hit her sessions, even like not that she didn't want to or whatever, but like other things in life were like cannibalizing her time. And then she had all this other stress in her life, and so she was super tired all the time, but she wasn't able to be consistent. So I kind of knew what was going to happen. You know, what am I going to say? Like, if it's like she's coming to the race, I'm going to be like, okay, we're doing this, like, get it done. Was it perfect? Was it going to be awesome? Was I super like it's just, you do the work, you get the race you trained for. So in some cases, if you don't do the work, that's the race you're going to get. End of story. Like there's no miracles. It's not really miraculous what happens. And then I have other athletes that are just like, and she was awesome, and her race was fantastic, and it was exactly what I expected to happen, and like still things went wrong out there, but she toughed it out and she had an amazing day. I could see that one coming from a mile away. I knew she was going to be awesome, right? Yeah. So again, cause and effect. And then I had another athlete, awesome training block, just super fit. Every race this year, she cracked the top 10, then she cracked the top 8, then it was top 5. Then she's like coming to Worlds, and like she's coming from a flat place too, but I was still like, she was committed to Zwift. And then she got here and she was just like, like it just wasn't good. Yeah. And so we're gonna have to go and debrief. Like it sounded to me like maybe she had some effects of altitude, which I always underestimated in St. George. Hold on, I'm gonna cough.
Altitude, the dryness.
Yeah. No. Like I personally have never raced well in St. George. I've been here like 3 or 4 times, and every time I was like, wow, I kind of sucked here. And coming here to train, everything in the pool is under what I could do. Everything on my bike, power's low, running low. Like and it's not even that high, right? It's not that high, but it's enough that it's affecting my body. And so I'm like, it's not like I'm at like in Vail where everything's like super low, but it's enough that it's taking the top off. And so when she was describing her symptoms, like super high heart rate, super low watts, like feeling a bit breathless, all of that sounds like altitude, right? Yeah. So it just sounds to me like she had a bit of like, she's a heavy responder to it. And she just kind of it just wasn't her course, right? So maybe if she wants to do this, she needs to come 10 days in advance to kind of get over that hump. She might've been just at the wrong day. And so I mean, and then you can have days where you just come in, and so all of these, I'm pretty sure what happened, right? So here I can explain why everybody's race was the way it was so far. But you are going to have days where you just come to a race and like you didn't expect to be awesome, and all of a sudden, like, I don't know, a switch goes off and you're just extra rested, and all of a sudden you super compensate and you just are flying, and you were thought, wow, I didn't think that was going to happen. And you're going to have the opposite. You're like, I rested everything. I did everything perfectly, legs up the wall, time, perfect training block. And then you just go and you just lay an egg, and it just happens, right? Like sometimes you can't explain why it was so bad. Most of the time there's something, right? So if somebody has a really bad race that doesn't reflect their training, I'm going to try and dig it out. And like I said, I'm describing some examples of how I know why certain races went the way they did. But I've talked to other pros and like they've said, I don't know, like some days maybe it's hormones, who knows? Like, you know, you can just have a day where you just don't have your day.
Well, and I think that's what's great about having a coach is that coach can be that third party or that objective, evaluator of what is going on. Sorry, Ted, go ahead.
Mhm.
Yeah, well, I was just going to add that, even with seasoned pros like yourself and, the interview, I don't know if you saw the coverage today with Paula Finley afterwards. She's like, I had good legs today. And she's like, it even surprised me how good they were. But this is somebody that races often and has raced often for a long time. And for her to be surprised about her legs today, like that tells you that there's some days that it's not good, right? And age groupers are just the same. Maybe you did one too many training sessions a little too hard and you missed your taper just a little bit and you have bad legs. And it doesn't mean you didn't have a very successful build. It's just things weren't quite perfect. And I will agree, especially with females and hormonal issues, we do know that there are hormonal influxes that can absolutely make you like Superwoman or actually make you not good at all. And it sucks. And it's, it can be good, it can be bad, right? And I think that as a coach, I think that must be really difficult for you to try and be that, the sounding board for those days.
Yeah, and speaking to Paula, I think that anybody so I follow her on Strava mostly to like follow what Paulo's up to, and like a big shout out to Paulo for like really preparing her really well for this. But anybody that follows her on Strava knew she was going to run out of her mind. It's like, this is the most consistent I've ever seen her like hit volume with intensity in her training. None of her bike numbers came down. Like she's just actually been like, and she had like an absolute like perfect build through Dallas to this race. So I knew she was going to run really fast. I'm sure Paulo did too, even if she didn't. Because like this is was a block of consistency I haven't seen her do in a long time. And so I stalk a lot of athletes to mostly as not so much because I am like an athlete trying to copy what they do, more as a coach trying to see how different coaches approach different professional athletes in their training. And so I'm like stalking Paulo basically. But I did the same thing with like Heather Jackson when she was but like through the pandemic and into her like coming into, was it last year or whatever, but and I just saw like just the what she was doing to me looked like, wow, I don't know how she's going to get to a race and still have anything left. And I think that's probably how she felt in that year because of how much she was doing. And so it's just really interesting, like as a coach, even to like see what is and isn't working for different athletes. And I just use Strava for that because the ones that are willing to share it, I'm going to study it. Right. So why wouldn't I? So no, I think anybody watching Paula Strava would see that she was in really good shape and put in a solid block.
It's kind of, it's funny. It's really easy to see, right? If you truly follow somebody's training and see their build and see what they're able to do in the volume, because really, this is a volume business, right? Like as much as we think that, oh, we've got to do this interval and this interval and this interval, they're nice, but this is aerobic training. And, and that's in my mind, at least, that's the key to all of this is volume.
Well, I think at the professional level, everyone's doing kind of a lot. So I don't think it's not a number. Like for the age group field, certainly, like there's a minimum amount of volume that's going to make you a top age grouper. And if you're not hitting that, you just need more. But then like in the pro field, everybody's doing a lot. And so then it's what are you doing a lot of? And I think in this 70.3 is definitely like it skews a lot more to like that higher threat, more like the Olympic distance sort of intensity. Like you have to be fast and you have to train for it as a fast person. So what I'm looking for is like how much time was she able to spend like at her like real like half marathon pace and faster, and back it up with other training and like be able to hit that intensity, because it's like for her to just run around wasn't going to make any difference because she could just ride her bike more, but she was actually able to hit faster sessions running that and recover. And so I did notice that she slowed down a lot in her easy runs, which I think is also key. That so some of the stuff is easier, but off the back of like some faster stuff. So
Awesome.
yeah.
No, I love your perspective on that, and then the true difference between the pros and the age groupers. And so let me ask you another question then, as far as like the age groupers trying to emulate pros.
Yeah.
And how do you deal with that? Because I know coaches have to deal with, hey, but so and so is doing this. I saw them on their blog, or I follow Finley on Strava. How come I'm not doing this? So how do you deal with that?
I don't have a lot of that.
Okay.
Right. I don't have I'm happy for everybody to like be looking at what everyone else is doing. And I'm happy to explain what they're doing and why. And like if that is or isn't part of their personal journey. But I think like what I try to do is instill confidence in what we are doing for that individual athlete, so that they don't really like, for me, when athletes are going and trying to like pull stuff off of Strava or like do workouts that other people are doing, it's because they're not confident in what they're doing or that it is working. So if they want to do something else, it's because they don't believe in what they're doing. And I mean, honestly, if you don't think what you're doing is going to work, it probably won't. So that's a crisis of confidence in your coaching. And so that would be a problem, right? Yeah. So I don't know, maybe that has happened and an athlete has gone somewhere else because they don't believe in what like we are doing, and that's cool. But yeah, but I think that the first rule is that elite athletes are special. Number one, like they are genetically better, period. Like the top ones for sure. So to a certain point, like you just have to have good parental genes to start with to be that fast. So that's number one. And then like if you start to like come down into the elite and the elite age grouper field, then a lot of it comes down to like patience, consistency, good coaching, good decision making. Like what I see a lot of really talented athletes that make a lot of really stupid decisions over and over again. And the reason I see that is because that is me. Right. So I've seen myself do a variety of things more than once and not learn from the original failure only to fail again. And so I've been really good at like learning from a lot of failure because I just fall in the same hole a variety of times. But I see that a lot of times with elite athletes and that derails a lot of them. Like you kind of just see what they're doing and you can't help, but you know that that's what they're doing. Right. Whether it's constantly overtraining themselves, not stopping when, they're hurting in training and they could just take the day off, but they just plow through, or how they choose races, just their lifestyle, like things like that, that makes a difference between a really good elite pro who's consistent and one who's not. And sometimes that's, not being able to take good advice. Definitely that was like to a certain age, that was my problem. But I don't know, like just there's different personalities in the sport, and sometimes your personality can actually get in the way of you, expressing your potential. So, so when you like go, like if all of that is happening in the elite field where these athletes do this full time, again, all of that exists in the age group field as well. There's just less time and, like less room for error because you have less time. So you have to like make the most of the time you have, and you have to make good decisions. So, yeah, I think that understanding, like knowing where your blind spots are, knowing what your weaknesses are, really having good perspective on where you are right now so that you can, okay, this is where I actually am. Everybody I talk to thinks they're better than they are. They don't have a really strong understanding of like what their overall fitness profile is. And that's a good thing to like nail down. And then you can work from there, because everybody wants to overtrain and that doesn't do you any good at all in terms of consistency. So yeah, so that's kind of like when an age grouper is looking at a pro, they can learn from them in a variety of ways. Like here's things to do, like with some, and here's a lot of things not to do, which are readily available all over YouTube.
Yeah. Oh, I'm going to do it. Sam Long did a 180K bike ride, so I should go do one. No, you shouldn't. You could, but it probably is not in your best interest right now. Can we build to that? Yes. But
Well, we're just coming back to this whole comparison
Yeah.
like thing, like this constant comparison, which isn't healthy or productive a lot of the time.
Well, no, I think sometimes the athletes need to have blinders on to that, right? Just once again, just you.
Yeah.
Who are you? Where are you? What are you? And let's figure that out first. Go ahead, John.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love this. This is so neat. It's neat to hear you talk about yourself as well. So I'm wondering, how much has your coaching, as that's evolved, how much has that influenced you as the athlete, or which way does that get pulled?
Yeah, I think so a lot of my experiences, like coaching in a nutshell is offering experiential advice, period. Like that's what it is. Like at the end of the day, every athlete can choose whether or not they want to pick that advice up and use it or not. So I'm just here to like share in the decision making and like, relay some information that I've gathered in my life experience as a triathlete. It's been long. Like I've been like racing professionally in a variety of sports since 1993. So it's a long time that I've been doing that. And I've been coaching since 2004. So I've had a long experience with a variety of different athletes, which sort of colors my decision making. And there's no question, like I've learned a lot from working with age groupers, even for my own, training for myself, and like how athletes like time manage and how they prioritize and things like that, as I've like kind of went from, okay, well now I'm like a full-time coach and I'm a part-time athlete. So like, how am I going to like compartmentalize these things to reflect that? But yeah, I think, okay, what was I talking about there? Okay, so I was talking about.
Does Coach Mel influence athlete Melanie, or which way does that drive the?
Yeah, so Coach Mel is very aware of, walking the talk, right? So I'm not going to tell an athlete to do something that I wouldn't personally do, right? So, and I'm not going to, do as I say, not as I do, right? So certainly I think about that stuff, especially when I'm racing. Like if things are going pear-shaped, I'm not going to start to cry and drop out, because like if I would be very upset if an athlete just turned into a baby and like dropped out when they could have finished or done something, right? So certainly I'm aware that potentially they're looking to me to set some kind of example, like how are we going to do this, right? So there's that. And then, what I wanted to say, I was going to go down this road with this, I started this mentorship with Altus, because I broke my ankle in 2016. And this is a long story, but I mean, it's actually, this very well illustrates why I'm at the stage I'm at in coaching. So broke my ankle and I like shattered it. My ankle was screwed, right? And I could not bounce off the ground off my left leg at all. I went and at the time, I had a bunch of contracts that wouldn't be paid unless I went and finished races. So I went and tried to finish, and I went from running somewhere around 124 off the bike to 150, 2 hours. Like I could not run at all. And I was like, wow, this is a problem. It's not like I'm just going to get back in shape and so I was like, my ankle doesn't work. And then I realized a lot of people's ankles don't work. A lot of people can't run at all. And how am I going to teach them how to run? How am I going to teach myself how to run? I need to understand the biomechanics, coaching speed, coaching strength, all this stuff. I need to figure this out. And so I went and I did a bunch of strength training programs. I went to Altus, which is they train the world's fastest sprinters. And it was really interesting for me to then start to really learn from these other sports about coaching, B, run philosophy, and all of it has revolutionized how I approach preparing, triathletes, particularly older triathletes, to be able to run fast. And for me, it's also really been amazing for me to I think I've rehabbed my ankle. I've run relatively fast on it. I've run a 3:13, which is my best marathon and I did it on this ankle. And I got down to like a 125, I think, off the bike in 2019 on this ankle, which they told me I was never going to run again. So I'm pretty happy with that. And so that mentorship, which came like because athlete Mel had to relearn how to run and understand like what is required, made coach Mel way better run coach, way better at incorporating strength into programs, way better at like having like a 30,000 foot view of training, because it's not just like, to a certain extent, it doesn't even really matter what you do for workouts, right? Like to a certain extent, you can like, there's a variety of different ways to like, there's no magical workout. There's just like, we're going to train a quality, and there's a variety of ways to do that. So who cares which exact workout you do? Whereas like, I think when coaches come up, they think there's these magic workouts like that are going to like all of a sudden turn this athlete into like, so this pro athlete, here's my favorite workout, right? Who knows if that workout is going to do anything for you? It's the 30,000 foot view of looking at how can I get from like the swim to the bike to the run the fastest possible? Where are the gaps? And sort of looking at problem solving looking at coaching as a problem solving and like a process management where like, you know, you have to do A before B before C, you know, that has just made me, you know, a lot more effective in my coaching. And so athlete experience definitely colors coaching decisions for sure.
I love it. That's great.
Well, and I think you added into that, you know, you've made the mistakes, right?
Yeah.
And so you're able to help the people that you work with because of those mistakes, and not just the mistakes, but also the times when you've been successful, right?
Yeah.
And I think experientially coaching is an awesome way to do it, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, I can see this athlete going down this road that's going to be a problem, and because I went down that road and it became a problem, and but it must be very frustrating when they still do it. Right?
Yeah. Well, and I think one of the things is like I get a lot of women that come to me and they're like, well, I'm never going to be fast, but you know, I just kind of like to be faster or whatever. And so they kind of, and very often these women are like in their 40s or something like that, and they just think their whole life is over because like society just says when you turn 40, like you're just whatever. And so, and that's exactly the experience that I had with like coaches telling me when I was 37 that I was like too old and I was like, probably should get ready to retire. And then like, I think I was 42 and I won like 4 70.3s that year.
Yeah.
And then I won a world championship at 44. And then like, I didn't even start racing Ironman until I was 42. And I'm 100%, like I'm definitely at the, like, I'm never going to be at Kona and at the front of the race. Like that ship sailed because I don't have the pedigree as an Olympian when I was younger. So that's just never going to happen. But I'm getting a lot better at Ironman right now. And I think my consistency at that distance and how fast I'm going just keeps improving. And I'm like 49 years old now. So like, it's just ridiculous. Right. But the point is that I didn't start till I was 42 and I'm still getting better. So why can't these women who don't have like a long history of training, why can't they expect to get way faster than they are right now? And that's my messaging, right? It's like your age doesn't matter. Like potentially it's your training age, right? So you look at somebody like Ellie Salthouse, who like started triathlon when she was 7, right? She's a youngster, but she's probably has nearly as many years as I do because I didn't start till I was 23. So if you're like me and or maybe you're like me, only instead of 23, you're starting at 41, right? You still have like 10 years of like just the, you know, exponential improvement in your performance that you can expect, like just from doing anything, right? So just because you're not fast now, it doesn't mean you can't get way faster. And frankly, I don't think your age really matters if you do the things that are correct for your age, right? Like I think how you train has to reflect where you're at in your age. And like just like small examples are, you're not going to get away without strength training. You're not going to get away with really long tempo sessions frequently because there's certain things that are just harder to recover from when you're older. But if you're smart about it, you can absolutely expect to get faster. And I think that's sort of the only reason I'm still racing as a pro is I'm like, okay, how long can I still get faster and still be competitive here? Because, somebody has to do it first. Like Dee Dee is still doing it. Like she's doing quite well at her age as well. And I think the more of us that sort of like refuse to go away and are just like, hey, like we're still here, the better it's going to be for athletes that are 39 that could like potentially be peaking in their early 40s that I never got the opportunity to think that way. I was just stubbornly resistant to retirement. So,
well, I for one, and maybe John's the same, can't wait for retirement because then I can actually be trained like a pro. So.
Oh yeah, yeah, you guys will be pro athletes at that point. That'll be awesome.
Exactly, pro athletes not getting paid, but still the lifestyle of a pro. Well, Mel, thank you so much for your time tonight. I know we're getting close to an hour, and I actually have to go drop my run bag off.
Oh, you got my
bike. I got my bike right before this, but now I got to go drop my run bag off. I think I have till 7 or something like that to drop it off.
Yeah.
But it was so nice to chat with you again. I know, we met a long time ago on a bike ride, and that was awesome. And I look forward to seeing you soon. I'm going to be in Arizona, I think.
Oh, cool.
I'm signed up for it because once again, it was a year ago decision.
Cat's out of the bag now.
My body is not ready. Yeah, my body's not ready for it, but well, it'll depend on tomorrow if I actually if I end up going. But if I do, I look forward to seeing you. Yeah.
Well, I'll be there for sure. And I thank you again for you guys inviting me to join you guys on this podcast. Like, I look forward to like seeing more of your like science-based interesting theories and stuff like that. And awesome. I'll look forward to seeing you in Arizona.
Okay, awesome. And we'll hopefully see you tomorrow too.
Oh yeah, I'll be on course. I'll be the one cheering like a mad woman.
Okay, awesome.
All right, Melanie, thanks so much.
Okay, thank you again for inviting me, you guys. Talk to you next time.
Okay.
Okay, see ya.